Welcome back to the Motivated Savages podcast, where we live bold, lead fearless, and ignite our path forward. I'm Jody Savage, and today I want to explore a question that starts with an old house and ends somewhere you might not expect. Have you ever noticed what people say when they're looking at an older house? Sure, they'll talk about the kitchen. They'll comment on the roof. Maybe they'll notice the hardwood floors or the old windows. But someone almost always asks the same question. Does it have good bones? I've heard that phrase my whole life. It's funny though, I don't know much about houses. I couldn't tell you what makes one foundation better than another. If someone pointed out load-bearing walls, I'd smile and hope nobody asked me a follow-up question. But somehow, I know exactly what people mean when they ask that question. They're not asking about the paint or the cabinets. They're asking about the parts they may never see. The framing, the foundation, and the beams hidden behind the walls. No one walks through a house and says, "Wow, that wiring is beautiful." People don't invite friends over to admire the foundation or post pictures of the plumbing. But if those things aren't right, nothing else really matters. You can repaint every room, replace every cabinet, and refinish every floor. But if the structure underneath can't carry the weight, all you're doing is decorating a problem. I've been coming back to that thought, not because I'm thinking about buying an old house, because I'm wondering if houses have been teaching us something else all along. Think about what actually makes a house feel safe. It isn't the paint, the furniture, or the layout. It's the confidence that everything you can't see is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. You walk through the front door without wondering if the ceiling is going to stay where it belongs. You climb the stairs without questioning whether they'll hold you. You fall asleep upstairs without thinking about the foundation beneath you. You simply trust it. Not because you've inspected every beam, but because the structure has earned your confidence. Maybe that's what trust has always been. Not seeing everything, believing what's underneath can carry the weight. And that's where my mind wandered. Why do we understand that so instinctively when we look at a house, but almost never when we look at ourselves? I think people have good bones, but not the kind the X-ray would find. The kind you only discover after you've known someone for a while. Have you ever met someone who just feels steady? It's hard to explain. They're not the loudest person. They're not trying to impress anyone. There's just something about them that lets you exhale. You don't feel like you have to guess who they're going to be today. They become dependable. And maybe that's what good bones look like in a person. Not perfection, but consistency. Not getting everything right, but being someone others can build trust around. Think about how much attention we give the visible parts of our lives, our careers, our homes, our accomplishments, our image. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. In fact, they're worth celebrating. But they're also the easiest parts for us to notice. The harder work usually happens somewhere else. It's in the conversations no one else hears. The promises we keep when breaking them would be easier. The habits we build before anyone notices the results. The small decisions that don't seem important today, but become who we are tomorrow. Maybe those are our support beams and load-bearing walls. Maybe character isn't something people see. Maybe it's something they slowly learn they can lean on. And maybe that's why people ask about good bones before they ask about paint. Not because appearance doesn't matter, because they know appearance can't carry the weight. Eventually, every house tells the truth about what's behind the walls. I wonder if people do too. Here's something else I noticed. You almost never think about what's behind the walls until something stops working. You don't wake up in the morning grateful the wiring remembered to do its job. You don't take a shower and stop to appreciate the plumbing. You don't stand in the living room thinking, I'm really glad this foundation is still holding everything up. The better those things work, the less you think about them. It's only when the lights don't come on, or water starts dripping through the ceiling, or a crack slowly works its way across the wall, that suddenly everything hidden has your attention. Isn't that interesting? The strongest parts of the house become visible when something goes wrong. That makes me wonder if people work the same way. You don't spend much time thinking about trust until someone breaks it. You don't think much about patience until it runs out. You don't notice consistency until someone who has always been there suddenly isn't. Maybe that's why those moments feel so much bigger than they seem. It isn't because one thing changed. It's because something underneath shifted. Something you didn't even realize was carrying so much weight. Maybe that's the highest compliment we can give someone. Not that they're impressive, successful, or talented. Maybe it's simply this: I never had to wonder if you'd be there. Then I found myself thinking about the people who build houses. Imagine spending months measuring, cutting, lifting, adjusting, knowing that almost everything you're working on will eventually disappear. The framing, the wiring, the plumbing, and the insulation. Then one day the drywall goes up. And just like that, most of the work disappears from view. The better the work, the less anyone will ever notice it. Not because it wasn't important, because it was. The drywall isn't hiding the work. It's simply allowing the work to become part of the house. It doesn't need attention anymore. It carries the weight. I wonder if people grow the same way. When we're young, doing the right thing often feels like a decision. Being patient takes effort. Keeping your word takes intention. Showing kindness sometimes requires reminding yourself. But eventually, those decisions stop feeling like decisions. They become part of your structure. Maybe that's why the strongest people often seem so ordinary. They're not trying to prove they're dependable. They're simply living from a structure they've been building for years. Quietly, faithfully, and without needing anyone to notice. And that led me to another thought. The people living in the house rarely think about the people who built it. They don't have to. The builder did such a good job that years later, complete strangers simply trust the work. Isn't that amazing? The builder may never meet the family who lives there 20 years later. But they still benefit from work someone cared enough to do well. I wonder if we're doing the same thing every day. Every promise we keep, every difficult conversation we choose not to avoid, every time we choose what is right instead of what is easy. None of those moments feel life-changing. They're just another board, another beam, another nail. But one day, someone else may find peace because of a structure we built. Which brings me to one last thought. Why would anyone spend months restoring an old house? Why not tear it down and start over? Because they believe there's something worth saving. They see beyond the peeling paint and the cracked plaster and the broken windows. They believe in what's underneath. They believe the bones are still good. I can't help but wonder if hope works the same way. Maybe hope isn't pretending the cracks aren't there. Maybe it's looking past them, believing there's still something underneath worth building on. The next time you walk into an old house, I hope you still notice the kitchen, the windows, and the hardwood floors. But I also hope you find yourself wondering about everything hidden behind the walls. Because after spending all this time thinking about it, I don't think good bones are really about houses. I think they're about whatever carries the weight. Maybe that's why good bones matter so much. Not because they're beautiful, because they make beautiful things possible. So here's the question I'm leaving you with. If someone walked through the house of your life, what would convince them it has good bones? Not your job title or your accomplishments, not the things you've collected. What would they discover if they stayed long enough to notice what can't be seen at first? Would they find someone who keeps their word? Someone who shows up and stays steady when life gets messy? Someone people can lean on without wondering if the structure will hold? This week, don't focus on repainting the walls. Don't worry about making everything look perfect. Instead, spend a little time strengthening something no one else may ever see. Keep the promise. Have the difficult conversation. Choose patience one more time. Do one thing that adds another beam to the structure. Because one day, someone you love may never realize why they feel so safe around you. And maybe that's exactly the point. I'm Jody Savage, and this is the Motivated Savages podcast. Live bold, ignite your path. That's the Savage way. If this message resonated, share it with someone you think has good bones. And if you want to carry this message with you, check out our merch line at motivatedsavages.com. We've designed gear to remind you to live bold every day. Together, we're building the Savage community, a movement of people choosing purpose, growth, and bold living.